These are the 3 key pillars to any high-performance team. If right now you're looking at your team and you're feeling frustrated, you're feeling just a little bit disappointed, you feel like your team is good, they're good enough, but they're not great. They're not that dream team that you wish you had, and you're maybe thinking to yourself, man, is it me? Are my expectations just too high? Or is my team really just not good enough? This is the video for you because we are going to cover these 3 core pillars that every single high-performance team I have ever seen or worked with has. And if you're missing any one of these 3, this is the opportunity to identify what that is and tomorrow start building this pillar out within your team. I dare you. I want you to see how quickly your team levels up when they are backed by these 3 pillars. So let's dive into it. Pillars are psychological safety, radical ownership, and growth coaching. And I'm going to take as much time as I can today to break these down in detail for you. So the first one is psychological safety. Most business owners haven't even heard the term psychological safety. So what does psychological safety actually mean? Psychological safety very essentially is, does your team feel safe in their roles, and do they feel safe to fail? Why is this so important? Because at its root, human beings, guys, we're just like animals. Like, we're not that complex. We want to feel safe. We want to feel taken care of. More than anything, we fear rejection. And if your team is even a little bit worried that their role is unsafe, that they may not have a future job at your company or with you, that if they don't perform perfectly, if they don't do everything right, then they are not safe, then fundamentally, your team is averse to risk, failure. What comes with risk and failure? Innovation. It is literally impossible to innovate without failing. It is impossible to have trial and error without error. If you want your team to be taking risks and coming up with big, bold, creative ideas, they have to feel safe enough that some of those ideas won't work out. They have to feel okay with the fact that some of that shit is going to fail. And if they are worried that their job is on the line, if they try and they fail, then it is much safer to just not try. So if you're not seeing that level of creativity, innovation, proactivity, big, bold thinking from your team, the first question to ask yourself is, have I, number 1, led by example? And number 2, have I made it explicitly okay for them to fail? Do I, in fact, reward failure? Because what I'm really rewarding is the fact that they tried something, the fact that they took a risk, the fact that they came up with an idea, they proactively executed it, and not all of that worked out. But if you look at the world's most innovative companies, Netflix and Google, and you look at how they systematically lead and reward failure, they build failure into their market plan. They assume that over half of the ideas they try will fail, but they know that that 1 in 100 ideas that makes it is going to quantum leap the business forward. And so are you as a leader allowing your team to fail? Are you as a leader leading by example and publicly announcing when you fail? Because let's be honest, as entrepreneurs, how many times a day do we fail? All the time. We do the wrong thing. We make the wrong decision. In retrospect, we could have done that better. Are you sharing that out loud, explicitly with your team? Are you celebrating yourself for it and showing them by example that it is okay for them to not always have the right answer, for them to try a thing and for it to not work out? And when your team does try something and it does fail, are you publicly in front of everybody celebrating them for that? Are you publicly in front of everybody turning that into an opportunity for growth, for learning, for encouragement, for them to go and try again? If you've created a truly psychologically safe environment, your team is safe to try. They are safe to fail. They are safe to take bold steps forward because they know that you're not going to come down on them. You're not going to get angry at them. Even the emotional reaction that you have in that moment of failure is key. So tactically, what does this look like? When your team fails, that is the critical moment. How you respond as a leader is going to change everything about the level of innovation and creativity that you see at your company long term. Let me give you 2 of these. In movie number 1, your teammate tries something, they fail. It costs you money. It is a bad mistake. What do? Do you freak out? Yell at them? Get upset? Get really angry? Do you jump in and fix this problem for them? Do you rant about how much this just cost the business? Hey, if those emotions are real, those emotions are valid. But if any of that leads forward into your team, then what are you telling them? Whoop, I just got in trouble. I am not safe. I do not feel safe to fail. If I fail, my boss gets upset. My boss comes down on me. That reaction shuts down innovation, creativity, because at the root, it eliminates psychological safety. Versus movie 2. Movie 2 says, boss, I just tried something. I made a mistake. It just cost us some money. Movie 2 says, number 1, thank you for telling me. Guys, this is the script. Write it down. Part 1, thank you for telling me. And actually mean it. Because let's be honest, they didn't have to tell you. They could have just swept that shit under the rug. You never would have known about it, and it would have been a much bigger mishap down the road. So thank you. Thank you for telling me. What are you going to do about this? What have you learned from this? And what can we do differently? What can we do better next time? Guys, I'm going to get to this in part number 2 around radical ownership. But when your team takes failures as opportunities to learn, then what you're actually doing is turning failures into a vehicle for growth. You're actually using it as an accelerator. So while your competitor next door is taking failures and they're in movie number 1 and they're freaking out and they're slowing everything down to jump on the grenade and point fingers and stall out their business to solve this problem, you're taking that exact same failure and just saying, thank you for telling me. How are we going to capitalize on this? What are we going to learn from it? How are we going to do better next time? And you actually get better faster. Your company actually starts moving faster because while other people are taking failures to slow them down, your failures are speeding you up. So number 1 is psychological safety and how you respond to failure for yourself, for your team, and how you publicly talk about it and reward it is the key to establishing psychological safety so that your team feels safe to try, to learn, to innovate, to fail. Every high-performance team has this. Key pillar number 2 is radical ownership. What is radical ownership? Radical ownership means that every single person on your team shows up to work like the CEO of their own role. Meaning, if I am your client success manager, I am showing up to work not to send emails to clients, not to have check-in calls with clients, not to answer client questions when they come to me. I am showing up to work for one reason and one reason only, and that is to maximize client retention and client lifetime value for the business. The difference between the two is that if I'm your client success manager and I'm just thinking about a to-do list, I'm just thinking about the tasks that I need to get done today, well, when I get to the end of the list and all of my tasks are checked off, I can close my computer, I can go grab a drink with my friends, and that's the end of the day for me. Versus you, CEO, you have radical ownership over your business. Do you ever just close the computer and truly just turn off from work? Truly just stop thinking about it? Truly just get to the end of your list at the end of the day and you're like, great, I'm done. Don't have to think about that anymore. No, of course you don't. It's always on your mind. It's always there. You are thinking about it when you wake up at 2 a.m. You are thinking about it on a Sunday morning. Why? Because it's yours. You own the result. You own the success or failure of your business. That doesn't go away at 5 p.m. on a Friday. That doesn't go away when you reach the end of your to-do list. Radical ownership means that you own the result and you will own every success. On the way to that result, you own every problem, every failure that you encounter on the way to that result, and the result is never done. The result never ends. If your team treats their role, their little slice of the pie, with that level of ownership, then they are also never done. That result never ends. And what that means is that you get team performance like, hey, I was reading a book over the weekend about my role because I wanted to level up and get better, sparked a really good idea, and now I'm coming in on Monday and I want to tell you about it. It looks like your team proactively solving problems because they have ownership, not just for when their job is going well, but when it's not going well. And when they run into obstacles, when they run into challenges, they recognize that it is their job, that no one, including you, is coming in to save them. That is their job. And so it's time to be resourceful, proactively figure this out. And then, I'll keep my boss in the loop in terms of what happened. So guys, I can't tell you how many times my team just solves things that I am totally unaware of and I don't need to be aware of because they're fully capable and competent and they can solve it themselves, right? So radical ownership looks like your team own the result of their role, not the to-do list. Your job as a CEO is to give them the result. Your job is to say, hey, new client success manager, yes, your job is going to include checking calls and emails. We have scripts and SOPs and templates to support you in that. But really, your job is to maximize client retention, client lifetime value, and month over month hitting minimum target of, let's say, 90% client retention month over month. That's the result. That's the job. And every check-in call that goes into that, and every email that goes into that, yeah, that's the to-do list, but that's not what you're here to do. If you can figure out a way, if you can innovate a way for getting 90% client retention without ever hopping on a check-in call, you're getting a raise and you're getting promoted because that's genius. And how did you do that, right? So extreme ownership starts with you, the CEO, helping every single member of the team understand what piece of the pie they own. How can they measure success in that piece of the pie? And then are you transferring full and complete ownership to them? Do they own every success, every problem, every failure, every roadblock, every challenge, every client fire, every escalation? Do they own everything to do with their role? Because at the end of the day, that's owning a result as opposed to owning a to-do list. Every single high-performance team in the world feels that sense of radical ownership because the ultimate unlock here, guys, what people own, they take pride in. If I own something, if I've created something, if it's my baby, if it's my responsibility, now I'm thinking about it at 2 a.m. Now I'm reading books about it on the weekend. Now I'm thinking about it even when I go get drinks with my friends because it's mine. I care about it and I have pride, self-worth, and identity attached to it. And I want to show up and do the best job. Not for you, my boss, not for my company, but for me. This is mine and I take pride in my work. So radical ownership not only gets the best levels of performance from your team, it not only creates proactivity and creativity and resourcefulness and problem solving, but you actually get the most buy-in because your team is showing up for themselves. Key pillar number 3. So we've got psychological safety, radical ownership. Key pillar number 3 is growth coaching. Let me ask you this. Is there any Olympian in the world that doesn't have a coach? That would be ridiculous, right? Like that would be kind of stupid. So if your team are truly A players, the best of the best, the top performers in their role, how the heck are they gonna get there without a coach? Doesn't make any sense. And yet most CEOs that I know have this kind of belief that like, well, I spent a lot of money on this person. They should just be able to crush it. What do they need a coach for? What do they need a manager for? What do they need me for? And that would be like, hey, Michael Phelps, what do you need a coach for? You're already so good at swimming. So every A player needs a coach. And in fact, they become A players by having a coach. And that coach is you. Probably. If you're their direct manager, then it's you. Or it's their direct manager. It is the person who's seen them show up in their role every single day and can be that outside perspective that offers feedback, insight onto where you're crushing it, and here's where you can do better. Most management systems that I see manage from bad to good. Meaning, I as a manager am only going to step in. I'm only going to manage you when there's a problem. When you've done something bad, when you're not meeting expectations, when you're not hitting KPIs. If there's a problem, then I will step in, then I will be your manager. But all that's doing is saying we're gonna wait until the performance falls to bad to actually do something about it, and then we're gonna manage it up to good. And then once it's good, we're gonna go hands off again and we're not gonna touch it again. Why would you manage to good? Because then all you're gonna get is good. Versus what a coach does, which is coaching somebody to go from good to great. There is always something to improve on. There is always something to do better. Even if you are crushing it in your role, there is always something you could be doing better. And a coach is there to help you go from good to great. They don't wait until there's a problem to offer constructive feedback. They are always watching, they are always offering feedback because we are assuming that there is something we could be doing better all the time. And so the way this looks in a business is one-on-ones. I recommend that managers have one-on-one coaching sessions with their team on a weekly basis. No less frequent than every other week, every 2 weeks. Because most people are like, what are you talking about, John? Don't we have to do this once a quarter, quarterly reviews? Isn't that a thing? Guys, imagine if Michael Phelps met with his coach once a quarter. What a joke. Like, I'm going to tell you to swim a little bit better once a quarter, and then I'm going to assume a quarter from now that you've actually done it? That would be ridiculous, right? So why is your team any different? What does anybody need to level up in any skill? They need support. They need accountability. They need somebody who is that outside lens, constantly helping them see where they've done well, where they could get better. They need consistency. That's what coaching brings. And so if you as a management team are not investing time into being that consistent, present coach, then I can promise you your team is underperforming. And of course they are, because they don't have a coach to help them consistently level up. And if your managers are only stepping in when there's a problem, then you are managing to the lowest common denominator, and you will get the lowest common denominator. Your people will fall. There will be problems. They will underperform because that's the level of performance that you're accepting. Versus managing all the time, coaching all the time, taking the last week or the last 2 weeks of their performance in the role and pulling it out and putting it on the table with them every single time and saying, where have you done well? Where could you get better? Where am I seeing amazing progress? Good job. Keep going. The reason that most people shy away from this is because it feels like giving constructive feedback is a negative thing. It's a difficult conversation. It's emotionally uncomfortable. I don't want to have it. And if I have to have it, I'm going to do it once a quarter with a little survey that they fill out. We'll just go through the survey and that'll make it less uncomfortable. That's a cop-out, guys. Constructive criticism doesn't have to be negative, right? No coach feels bad about telling an Olympian where they could be slightly better. It's the job. And in fact, the Olympian loves it. The Olympian is paying for it. The Olympian craves that data that says, here's how you could be doing better in your job. And so if you can reframe for yourself, your leadership team, and your team-wide, that feedback isn't a bad thing. It's not a negative thing. It's not an uncomfortable conversation. In fact, it's something we invite. It's something we welcome, because at the root, it's an act of service and love, isn't it? It's an act of service and love to help your team keep leveling up and become the best, most badass version of themselves. And so I'm going to take my time every week to help you do that. That is an amazing conversation. That is a positive conversation. And that conversation is pretty much always a great conversation because we're just talking about good to great. We're talking about the things they're already doing so well and how to make them even better. And so if you have that culture where radical honesty and radical feedback is not a negative thing, but instead it's something to be welcomed, and then you're building that into the ongoing communication flows of your team where everyone has to sit down every week or every other week to constantly level up and get better. Now you've got a team of Olympians. Now you've got a team that is consistently leveling up. They're taking radical ownership for their result, and they're taking the feedback that they're getting out of those coaching sessions and putting it to work within the role. And they feel psychologically safe to push the envelope, to innovate, to try new things, to always be getting better. And the combination of these three things is how you get those truly high-performance dream teams. Guys, if this was a helpful video, you know what to do. Go ahead, go ahead, subscribe, comment, and drop your questions below. I want to see them. I want to see where you're getting stuck when it comes to building the highest and best performing teams possible so that we can help you out. See you on the next one.